Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Friday Ramblings. We're here with some more Disney afternoon goodness, where we're going to discuss one of the most interesting shows in the Disney afternoon block, in that it's one of the few that was not inspired by a classic Disney cartoon or a recent movie spin-off like the Aladdin cartoon series. So far, except for our original entry on The Adventures of the Gummy Bears, every Disney show we've talked about, Disney Afternoon Show, Tailspin, Goof Troop, Rescue Rangers, can be traced back to the classic Disney shorts. However, our entry this week, Bonkers, can be traced to something much more recent to its original premiere. Sure, I look dapper for this. And that is the Disney Emblem Entertainment crossover picture, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, for those who are familiar with the film, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a detective story set in the classic film noir era, where public transport was all the rage and phones were something stuck to landlines and not heavily used. It's a wonderful film. I think everybody should really see it at some point in their lives. The basic part, though, that is important for the sake of today's Disney Afternoon show du jour is the idea that this was a world where animated cartoons were not things drawn on paper, but featured real live beings, called toons for short, that inhabited their own world, and that the cartoons, much like everything else seen on television or in theaters, were actors being filmed live. Thus, you could have humans and toons interacting. That base concept, humans and toons interacting, in a world where the cartoons we know are considered just standard TV theatrical fare, with a mix of police procedural mystery solving, is what we got with Bonkers. Now, the production of Bonkers is almost as interesting as the show itself. Bonkers was primarily produced and influenced by Mr. Wiseman, who is much more famous for his work a few years later on Disney's Gargoyles. This is all good work, sir. Both shows are quite excellent. And while he admits he did take the base concept from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the long-standing rumor that the show is actually designed to star Roger Rabbit has been denied. So, that's the first thing we're going to lay out here, because a lot of people that do remember Bonkers and have kept an eye on it over the years have no doubt heard that rumor. The rumor has been denied on multiple occasions. But here is where things really get fun. Now, the Bonkers episodes can be divided into basically two majority eras. And that is based on who Bonkers' police partner is. The male, Lucky Pickle, sometimes called Pickle, depending on who's speaking to him, and the female Miranda Wright. Ready for some fun? Originally, a batch of Miranda Wright episodes were produced intending to be the start of the series. However, when push came to shove, Disney executives did not necessarily like the dynamic between Lucky and Miranda, and instead opted for episodes featuring the more grizzled detective shown in the initial pilot episode, Lucky Pickle, and so the Miranda episodes that were already produced were put on the shelf, and we instead got Lucky Pickle as far as what it was aired on TV goes, the original partner. Now, eventually, the writers went through. The fact is, more than half the show is the Lucky Pickell era. But the writers got what they originally wanted, and Miranda Wright episodes were aired, with a new episode designed to transition between the two partners, showing why Bonkers was no longer partnered with Lucky and now Miranda, were aired, along with a few more Miranda episodes being aired, to bring the total count of the series to 61 episodes. So, interesting times. This is a case that, as has been seen a lot in, for instance, sitcoms, where episodes were not aired in the order they were produced, along with a few, sci-fi type shows that, partly because of that and the odd continuity that tended to create in more story-heavy things like hour-long dramas, tended to confuse audiences and prevent the shows from getting massive followings. But Bonkers did have a healthy following throughout its year and a half of airing new episodes, and it continued to air episodes across various Disney-owned TV channels for years after the new episodes ceased. So let's get into the premise, folks. Bonkers D. Bobcat is, much like Roger Rabbit, a Hollywood toon star whose star is fading. In the case of Bonkers, his show is canceled after it drops in the ratings, and shortly thereafter he stops a mugger on the street while being given an award for good citizenship and valor from the chief of police. Bonkers, in his wacky cartoon way, tried to explain that part of the way he was able to capture the mugger, although for official reference, he did a lot less than he was being given credit for. His soon-to-be partner, Lucky Pickell, did most of the work and got none of the credit. But in attempting to explain to the chief of police how Bonkers did what he did do, and taking credit for what he didn't do, referenced the times he had played a police character in his cartoons, but being wacky and silly, said it in a way where the chief of police, who in classic cartoon way, being a old good-natured authority figure, is himself not exactly the brightest bulb in the bunch, thinks that Bonkers is in fact an actual cop from another precinct and promptly hires him to be a new police officer specializing in cases involving toons. Partnered with Lucky Pickell, after the whole production thing we just discussed happened, Bonkers goes on many misadventures, being the bumbling junior partner to the often serious straight man Lucky. Should also be noted that part of the regular cast is Lucky's wife and child, because, of course, when you are a good-hearted but gruff, somewhat obese cop, you gotta have a family. Which helps because no matter how ticked off he got at Bonkers, his family was there to remind us he does have a good heart and a soft side to him. Eventually, though, as I said, we did get the transition episode, New Partners on the Block, in which, after chasing down a fire-starting criminal, Lucky managed to not only assist in getting him arrested, but specifically assisted the FBI, who at the end of this episode recruited Lucky. Thus, he leaves town, because the FBI are headquartered in Washington, D.C., not in California. And Miranda Wright, who had been seen sporadically during the Lucky era, is slotted in as Bonkers' partner for the rest of the series, including basically everything that had already been filmed with her previously, and I think a couple new episodes to balance things out. Besides this, you have the occasional guest shot appearances of established Disney characters. The pilot episode, for instance, the mugger's intended victim was Donald Duck, who appears in his DuckTales attire and continuity, essentially, as well as various other Disney characters appearing in their own episodes, which is good times. Some of the other characters is Bonkers' main love interest, Fondier, his best friend and stunt double, Fall Apart Rabbit, voiced by the iconic Frank Welker, as well as Miranda's older sister, Shirley Wright, a news reporter, and Shirley's own child, Timmy Wright, a bit of a spoiled brat who Miranda has been known to babysit on multiple occasions. As well as the aforementioned absent-minded Chief Knifke and Sergeant Francis Grading, a police sergeant who served as the direct supervisor of the Bonkers and Miranda era, often being unable to deal with Bonkers' wacky hijinks ways and thus becoming very high-strung as the episodes went on. Let's see, we got some of the other good, some of the other fun, good established Disney characters who showed up were Professor Ludwig von Drake, Brer Bear from the Song of the South, Mickey Mouse, Goofy, Horsecollar, Clarabelle Cow, and Lady and the Tramp, among a few others. Recurring antagonists include the Collector, the villain from the pilot episode, a toon that collects other toons and putting him in suspended animation, Ma Parker, a toon tow truck, as well as the Ape, Mammoth, Toon Bomb, Mr. Big, the Weather Toons, Mikey Muffin, Wacky Weasel, Scatter Squirrel, Zoom and Boom, and many others. Other appearances and references had the genie turning into an episode, in an episode of the Aladdin show, turning into Bonkers, and the Animaniacs series, which was often aired in a rival time slot, or was a rival in the same time slot, which would be the best way to phrase that, having the Slappy Squirrel segments, Slappy Squirrel herself being a former cartoon star, grown old and bitter, remarking that the Bonker cartoons were never funny. As well as the modern remake of DuckTales, which features Bonkers in a non-speaking cameo appearance in the episode Let's Get Dangerous. The series also inspired 3 video games, the first titled Bonkers, a platformer by Capcom released for the Super NES, a action-oriented game by Sega released for the Genesis or Mega Drive, depending on what country you like to live in, which consisted of 4 mini-games, and the third game, Disney Bonkers Wax Up, published for the Game Gear in '95, in which Bonkers sets out to rescue Lucky and several toons who have been captured. Thus, he had a pretty good ride. One of the interesting components about it, as I said before, there was some production fun, was At the time that Bonkers was getting ready to premiere for the Disney Afternoon, they had an anthology show running on the Disney Channel called Raw Tunage. So playing up the fact that Bonkers was supposed to be a former cartoon star, they actually produced shorts for Raw Tunage, which would air around the time that the Bonkers show was premiering, that would itself be served as a kind of continuity reference, this being a sample of the cartoons Bonkers filmed back when he was a big-time #1 star with his own show. Tricky, tricky, tricky. So, what is the legacy of Bonkers, realistically? Well, similar to how the fellow Disney Afternoon show Darkwing Duck and DuckTales tended to have an adventuresome spirit to it, and really, you could even say the Adventures of the Gummy Bears did as well, although they tended to be a little more redundant due to the small cast of villains they had. DuckTales was famous for the fact that they would just wander all over the world on their adventures. But it helped reinforce the idea that part of the Disney Afternoon, heck, even Tailspin, with the pirates and the occasional Shere Khan crooked businessman schemes, potentially causing harm to lowly, poor people. It helped reinforce the fact that Disney Afternoon were not just cartoons in the classic slapstick manner of the early Disney shorts and Looney Tunes, but were more action-oriented. This would continue with later Disney Afternoon era stuff like Aladdin and Gargoyles, which means it fit in quite nicely as part of the programming block. The other big influence to it is that, as I said, producer Greg Wiseman would use his success from this show to continue on into Disney's Gargoyles, which itself had a respectable run and still maintains a loyal audience to this day. Good on you, sir. To the point that they actually produced, the Gargoyles actually produced comic book stories designed to finish the story that he could not do in the cartoon series due to it being canceled before he could wrap up all the plot points. But is that all? Well, not really, as I said. In a lot of ways, the show brought some new innovations to it. This was the first cartoon Disney produced where somebody was blatantly seen having an occupation as any form of law enforcement on an ongoing basis. You might have had single shorts where you would see police characters, but the idea of it being the central plot point of an ongoing series is something new to Disney and certainly helped inspire many of their later shows with various superheroes and other defenders of justice. However, the comic still maintained its classic Disney roots with Bonkers' slapstick antics, his level of general intelligence and police competency varying between the Lucky and Miranda episodes, mostly due to that awkwardness of the Miranda Wright episodes being produced first and her being more of a equal partner, whereas Lucky Piquel, being a more experienced grizzled detective, played the straight man much more often, as well as take this job seriously, moral code type to Bonkers' antics. Thus, in the Lucky episodes, Bonkers was portrayed more as a bumbling detective in the classic Inspector Clouseau type, whereas the Miranda Bonker episodes tended to have more of that free-form, we're both kind of bumbling into the solution situation. As well as Greg Wiseman admits that the Bonkers-Miranda relationship did, in its own ways, help him inspire the later relationship between in Gargoyles between Detective Eliza and lead gargoyle Goliath. Whether it be in the sense of, well, I like basic personality types, now they played off each other, or simply the, hey, this is how to balance characters of differing genders who traditionally may or may not be, romantically attracted to that gender. You didn't really get too much of that in Miranda and Bonkers, but it was present with Goliath and Eliza. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, okay, I kind of got used to the idea of having a man and a woman bounce off each other semi-professionally, so we're going to kind of take this to the next level in Gargoyles. That is stuff that is important for writers to do. You get a feel for the basic dynamics, and then you bring them up to the next level in subsequent works. So you get that little bit of goodness. Now, when I watched the show back in the day, I did thoroughly enjoy it. I will admit that. I was young, and it was interesting stuff every week, seeing what kind of criminals would pop up, eventually getting the secondary partner, finding out years later that the second partner should have been the first partner, and then finding out why, because, well, hey, when you're writing stuff for a big network and a big studio, they have their own opinions about what you should write, even if it differs slightly from yours. Even after they've greenlit the basic show idea. It happens. Still, Bonkers is a show that I would recommend anybody who has not watched it before watch. It is good for all ages. Bonkers himself is an often overlooked Disney character, but one that should in many ways be enjoyed and respected. He has his place in the Disney history pantheon, and he should not be forgotten. I'm not saying we need a revival show. Hold up your horses. We all know how I feel on this channel about how hit and miss revivals and reboots can go. And I always do like to push things forward and give new creators and new ideas a chance. But that doesn't mean you can't continue to have Bonkers guest star in other stuff. He could be a recurring character in somebody else's show, especially playing up that kind of throwback style of humor. That early 90s nostalgia comedy. Just saying, might be interesting for somebody. For now, though, we are going to sign off because, without getting into spoilers about specific episodes and the fates of certain characters in the show, which I don't like doing on this channel because it's all about intriguing you to give something a chance or remembering something you haven't watched in ages and wanting to go back to it. So, we're going to wrap things up here. But, Bonkers, highly recommended. Good nostalgia throwback. Come back next week. We got some more rambling fun for you. We'll be here every Friday. Remember, I love it when you like and subscribe. It's great for you if you hit that notification bell, but also feel free to let other folks know about the channel if you think they would like this programming. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, throw them my way. I'll catch them. My little glove here. Whoop, polish them up, inspect them, and see what I can do with the idea. I want to hear from you. Still, be good. Join us next week and further into December, because eventually we're going to get right onto that last Friday of 2022, and that means we're going to have to send the year off with a bang. Also, don't forget our various other shows and our archived playlists. Have fun, be safe, stay healthy, because I do love all my viewers.